Hey there, Drawyah here, and welcome to this tutorial where I shall be going through the startup procedure for the all-new Aerosoft CRJ-550-700 for Microsoft Flight Simulator. In this tutorial, we'll be covering everything from turning the aircraft on, setting up the FMS and flight plan, starting the engines, pushing back and taxiing to the runway, as well as departure once you get there. And so it's highly recommended you have a SimBrief flight plan to follow along with. If you don't have one, don't worry, you can click on the top right corner to that video there, it shows you how to do this. So without further delay, let's jump into the cockpit and let's set the aircraft up. The very first thing you may want to do is check what state your aircraft is in. You can do this by going over to the EFB tablets, clicking on the screen to turn it on, wait a few seconds to load, and then head over to the aircraft tab page where you can check your default states. By default it's in turnaround, but you can click on its change. In my case, I like it to go on dark, but depending on what states you prefer, you can set this up or change between the four within the EFB itself. Now, let's go through startup procedure, shall we? The first thing you want to do is head over to the overhead panel and turn on the aircraft's electrical systems. These are the battery master and the DC service. You'll now see that the two sensor displays as well as your backup artificial horizon have come to life. What you're going to do is head back to the tablets, make sure that your chocks are set, and activate your ground power cart by clicking on the button there. Now see it says connected, head back to your overhead panel, and then where the AC switch now says available, click on it to make it in use. The rest of your aircraft system will come to life, and you should now also hear some background noise. This will be fans, pumps and systems slowly turn themselves on. Head back to your overhead panel and activate the rest of your overhead. So you'll want to activate both air conditioning. They will say faults for now, but that's fine, aircraft not started yet. Set the fan into the on position. Set your external lights, so nav comes on, beacon and strobes not yet. Logo lights, if it's nighttime, turn it on. If it's daytime, you can leave it off. And your wind inspection lights stay off. Hydraulics, move all four into the lower auto position. One thing worth noting in the Aerosoft CRJ, to manipulate switches, it's better to use your mouse scroll wheel than it is to click. That way you can manipulate switches easier up and down rather than clicking. So use your mouse scroll wheel to set all the switches. After that, and your seatbelt sign and no smoking are also in the on automatic position. Manage lights, make sure those are armed. And on the lower centre pedestal, at the very bottom, what you want to do is look for the two IRS switches. Move both of these into the nav position. Once done, you can head back to the FMS and start programming that. So I have a flight plan prepared on SimBrief for a trip from here in Munich to Bremen. We'll program that. You can use whatever flight plan you want, but for today's tutorial I am using a Munich to Bremen flight plan, which you are free to follow along. What you're going to do is click on Position Initialization. Plug in your departure airport, which is Echo Delta Delta Mike. Plug it in. And then where you have the coordinates, on the right hand side, copy that information and paste it into set position. Next, click on the F-Plan button, and here is where you'll plug in your flight plan. So your airport of origin again, Echo Delta Delta Mike. And our destination airport, Bremen, is Echo Delta Delta Whiskey. Plug that in. Our alternative airport is Amsterdam, so plug in the ICAO code for that, Echo Hotel Alpha Mike. Once you've input these three, what you want to do is head over to the next page, and here is where you start plugging in the waypoints. So our first waypoint is going to be input, India, November, Papa, Uniform Delta, and input that into the 2 position. Next we have an airway, Yankee 102. And so the easy way to tell airways and waypoints apart is that waypoints will either be 5 or 3 characters long and only consist of letters, or airways are 4 or 5 characters long and both consist of letters and numbers. From input, we fly the Yankee 102, and that takes us now to Alibu, Alpha Lima India Bravo Uniform. Plug that in. Next is Lima 604. Following Masek. Then we have Uniform November 851 to Keymad. Papa 605 to Delta Lima Echo. As you run out of space, click on the next page button, and that'll give you a fresh page to continue your waypoints. So next we fly the Zulu 88 airway to Virid. And that is the end of your flight plan. Once you've plugged it all in, click on the execute button, and if you have a look at the ND, you'll now see when you zoom out, that's your waypoints have all been plugged in. You'll also see that our PFD has aligned and all displays have come to life. After you've plugged in your flight plan, you'll now head over to your performance initialization. What you're going to do is plug in your cruising altitude. In my case, we'll be cruising at flights level 300 initially from Alibu step to 36 and then Keymad down to 24. We'll plug in our initial step of 300. Now make sure in the cruising altitude you set the full 30,000 and not just 300, as this will just throw you back a fault. Next we put our fuel on board. As the fuel is calculated in kilos in the Aerosoft CRJ, we'll put it in kilos, but in the tablet EFB you can switch this from kilos to pounds. So we have 4,104 kilos on board our aircraft. 410 fuel. Once it's plugged in, we'll now head over to the VNAV setup. And this way double check your climb calculations to make sure everything makes sense. So target speed of Mach 0.74, and this altitude currently here is 5,000 in Germany. And set speed 250 below 10,000. Once you're happy with everything, click on execute, and this will execute into the next page of your flight plan. Now what we're going to do is head over to the EFB tablets and set up your performance. This is very simple to do, and you can either do it via zero fuel weight or by manually setting your passengers and cargo on board. So let's say for example we have 60 board. I'm going to click on the box, remove it with the backspace and type in your new number, in this case 60. Click on enter. If you don't, it won't set. Board cargo, we have 125 kilos in the front. 1, 2, 5. Enter. And rear cargo, we have 410. Fuel on board, we empty that. We know it's 4104 kilos on board. Click on enter. What we're going to do is set the payload to the simulator. Depending on how much change the weights, the aircraft may bounce, but as it's only a small difference, the aircraft won't move too much. But you can now see that our centre of gravity has changed and is now in a slightly different position to where it was before. On the right hand side, you'll also see our takeoff setup. So we'll be using flaps 8 for takeoff. In 9 times out of 10, you'll be using flaps 8 for takeoff. Only in heavyweight and short runway, you may push for 20, but that is very rare and something you don't really need to worry about. You can set the runway conditions. Currently it's dry here in Munich, so we'll leave some dry. But if it's wet, set wet, snow, snow, ice, ice. And you'll see our V speeds are now set. So 129 knots V1, 130 rotate, 140 V2. What we're going to do is click on Set All. And what this does is it updates the speed bugs on the PFD there. So your speed tape will show you what your rotate will be at. Next, we'll jump down to the FMS again. And what we're going to do is plug in our departure. So according to the flight plan, we'll be departing on runway 26 right here in Munich on the input to November departure. So we'll head over to the departure and arrival index. You can see we're already in the Munich departure page. We're going to select runway 26 right for departure and input to November. is our SID. So a SID, Standard Instrument Departure, is a predefined route that tower will give you that allows you to safely depart from an airport away from other traffic, including those arriving, and also gives you peace of mind in that you're flying a safe route that's been pre-assigned by the tower. So with both selected, you can then execute that on the flight plan. You'll see a few more waypoints has been added to our departure. If we zoom into the end even closer, we'll see now that we have a more direct path out of the runway before turning right. And eventually we then arrive at the input departure with our first waypoints before. There's one more thing you want to do left, which is head over to the EFB again and set your takeoff trim. So at the very bottom you can see takeoff trim is at 7.5. On the ECAM here you can see it's set to 5.5 right now. So what we're going to do is adjust its position so that matches what you read on the tablets, 7.5 in this case. And there you go, our takeoff trim is now set up, our FMS is set up, and our aircraft is now ready for the next part of our setup. Head back to the overhead panel. What we're going to do is now set up the APU. First of all, click on the power fuel button. And on the second ECAM, what you'll see is two things appeared, APU invite and APU SOV open. The invite is self-test mode. Once that disappears, it leaves you with SOV open on its own. Back to the overhead, click on the start button, and this will now start up the APU for your aircraft. This will take a few minutes to start up, and so while you wait, make sure that then your master warning and master caution both are blank. Your altitude is set, in this case cruising altitude at flight level 300 will be set. A bit fiddly, Microsoft Flight Sim default scrolling. We'll start up your flight directors on the left and right, both synced. And that is that. Both FMSs are also independent, so you can do different things, both different systems at separate different times. I'm going to go head back to the overhead panel, and we're just going to wait now for the APU to be available. Just now, we will click on the AC button to turn off the external power. We will head back to the EFB, head to aircrafts. We will disconnect the ground power carts. And if the doors are open, or cargo doors are open at this point, now time to close them as your passengers have boarded. And as we're on parking brake, we know the aircraft won't roll, and therefore we're now going to turn off the wheel chocks. So that's been removed. You can now see ground parts and ground air both gone grey, as now you cannot select these again until you replace the wheel chocks. I removed that. Use yourself a performance page, that way you can keep your V-speeds in mind for your takeoff run. What you're going to do is head back to the overhead panel and activate both the left and right fuel boost pumps. At this point, we are now ready for our engine startup. Activate the beacon lights to alert ground crews that you are ready for your engine startup. And you can now call the pushback tug by pressing Shift P on the keyboard, or by using your dedicated pushback tool. So pushback helper, pushback zoomer, or any of the other options that are available out there. Once the tug is connected, what you can now do is release your parking brake. And this will start your pushback procedure. When the aircraft has moved away from the gate, you are now ready to start your engines. This is a very simple process in the CRJ, and so what you're going to do is head over to the overhead panel and start up the number 2 engine first. Click on the right engine starter. This will glow white with starts appearing in the middle. What you're going to do is wait for the N2 of engine 2 at around 1820. Once this has done that, then over to the right hand throttle, click on the red fuel lever and move the throttle into the idle position. You now see the N1 of the engine start to come to life. You can also hear in the background the engines roaring to life as slowly systems come on. Done with pushback, don't forget to reset your parking brake. The aircraft just went bing there, and so that informs you that your engine number 2 has now started. Head back to your overhead panel, and what you're going to do is repeat the same process now for engine number 1. So click on the engine startup. If it does appear, that's fine. If it doesn't, just click on the power button and wait until the engine number 1 and 2 has also reached 1820. Like before, you're going to flick the fuel switch and move the engine forward to the idle position. Watch your engine 1 N1 to stabilise also. While this is happening, we can do a quick flight control check and make sure systems all come to life. So, for example, on the lower pedestal, you need to make sure that your dampeners are turned on, your stabilizer trim both on, and your Mac trim is on, and the orange light is off. Engine 1 starts to stabilise. Back to your overhead panel and press the start-stop button again just to make sure that the APU has now switched off. You'll know that you've done this procedure correctly when the warning messages on the left-hand ECAM have disappeared and there's nothing left on display. You'll lower the flaps into the number 8 position as set in the EFB tablets. We're going to release our parking brake now that we're ready to taxi. We'll activate the taxi lights. We'll now make our way over to runway 26 right here at Munich. Do be aware that the engine power in the aircraft is certainly on the higher end, and therefore you can actually do a decent amount of taxiing without ever increasing the throttle. You can increase them slightly if you need to get a little bit of a boost going, but for the most part, like the A320neo, you'll be taxiing on idle throttle. Once you have reached your runway of departure, what you're going to do is of course contact ATC and get your takeoff clearance. When you've got this, you're going to activate your landing lights by scrolling down all 3 into the on position. Leave your recognition lights on for now, and also make sure that your strobes are turned on. Increase throttle slightly, that way you can have a slightly faster entry onto the runway. Start the chrono, once you're on the runway as well, starts the aircraft's clock. Increase your throttle to around 50%. Checking N1 and N2 both stable. Checking N1 for both engines are stable. And if you're happy with the setup, increase the throttle into the toga position. The throttle of the CRJ is notched, and therefore check your throttle position to make sure that's set to toga position. These knots check. 700 knots. E1 rotates. Aim for around 10 to 15 degrees of pitch as your aircraft starts to climb. Once you're away from the runway, raise your landing gear. You'll see on the speed tape a number in purple. That's your flap indicator, and so as you cross that, we can raise our flaps into the number 1 position. And as you continue climb, we will now start to activate autopilot. So you press the AP button on the pedestal on the right. Press AP engage on the option to the right. Sets to climb either by vertical speed or aircraft speed. In this case we shall set that to around 250 knots. It's up and sets the nav switch. So your aircraft will start flying on the flight plan. So our LNAV is now set, and this aircraft, while having VNAV system to the FMS, does not have auto throttle. So don't forget to reduce your throttle into the climb position. And that way your aircraft now follow a reduced throttle output while maintaining enough throttle to keep your aircraft climbing and maintaining speed when up at cruise. Once your aircraft has reached transition altitude, what you need to do is switch over to standard. This can be done by pressing on the barometer button on the left hand side here. As your aircraft starts to approach 10,000 feet, you're going to need to do two things here. Turn off your landing lights by using the scroll wheel all into the off position. And as your aircraft is now above 10,000 feet, you can also speed the aircraft up. Now again, without auto throttle in this aircraft, this will need to be done more manually, and so you can push in the middle of the speed button to switch to max speed, and using the scroll wheel, increase this to your target speed. So initially you'll say we'll go to Mach 0.6, and as we climb further, you'll slowly increase this up to your target speed, which in our case was Mach 0.76. And so keep close on your speed and your attitude, as both of those combined are very important in CRJ, which is a lot more manual than your normal passenger jetliner. And there you have it, your brand new CRJ slowly coming out of your departure airports. I hope you guys found this tutorial helpful in learning the basics of the startup procedure of the Aerosoft CRJ-550 and 700 Microsoft Flight Sim, and if you did, then please do consider leaving the video a like, and do subscribe too, as it starts to help the channel out, especially with the amount of love support you guys have shown me recently. Please also consider sharing too, as you don't know how many people are out there who now have the aeroplane looking for ways to start it up, and so this tutorial, while not perfect, does help you in the very basics of getting the engine started, onto the runway and taking off with a fully programmed FMS. And so I wish you guys many happy virtual hours. Thank you for watching, take care of yourselves, and I shall see you again in the very near future. Take care, have a good one, and goodbye.